Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and as I always say, please do remember, if you do not like what I say, how I say it, or why I say it, then do feel free to click off this video and go about the rest of your day in peace. And so today we are returning back to some book reviews as well as some tea time, so maybe a book review and tea time with me, your host, Ciarra. But anyway, so essentially over on my Instagram, I actually had a couple of you requests for me to do more book reviews, which I was really surprised by because I didn't think anybody was actually watching these. So we're gonna do more book reviews, of course. So of course, if you are not following me over on my Instagram, then please do check out the link down in my description because I'm always posting stuff on there. I'm especially, I think I might be transitioning my Instagram to include a little bit more varied things in like the spirituality, tarot things with the books, as well as my general art stuff. So if you're interested in seeing that and being a part of that, then please do feel free to look at that. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about my most recent finished book read, which was The Wicked King by Holly Black, right? Yep, Holly Black, which, as you guys know, I have a book review for the first book, The Cruel Prince, and which was a very much a, what is the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a compulsive read because I saw really awesome fan art on Pinterest, and the dynamic between, of course, the fan art is related to Jude and Cardan, and so that dynamic kind of reminded me of A Court of Thorn and Roses, which is one of my favorite book series now that especially involves the Fae, and so this is a very similar series in that Fae tone. Okay, the rest of the book is completely different from that the Court of Thorn and Roses series, as I said in my previous book review. But since we are talking about The Cruel King, which is book 2 in this trilogy, which I can't believe we're almost done. The last book is coming out, I think, in November of this year. And I know it's, I think, the end of this year, or maybe it's next year. I might be wrong. I'll double check it probably. But I, of course, rated The Cruel Prince 5 stars. And so if you want to take a guess at what I rated The Cruel King, 5 stars. So as with this first book, and with any of these book review videos, I will probably spoil things. So if you don't want to be spoiled for absolutely anything, then probably don't watch this video yet until you have gotten a chance to read the book. But with that said, I'll do my best to not spoil too much. Because I finished reading this about a month ago, so not every single detail is completely fresh in my mind, but the most important things are. So with that said, this follows a very similar structure to the first book in that it is essentially separated into 2 halves or books. And so, book 1, pretty much the first half of this book, The Cruel Wicked King, picks up exactly more or less where we left off in The Cruel Prince, which, again, if you didn't read that book, then you do not know or not aware of the awesome twist at the end. You just the very yeet moment that Jude does to Cardan, and essentially crowning him king of their Fae world, when really he was expecting her to crown her brother Oak to be the next king. So her whole reasoning for that was, of course, to give Oak a chance to grow up and hopefully in the human world and become a kinder person, and also age a little bit more, so that when it is time for him to take over and rule the kingdom, essentially, he will have more free will and more, smarts kind of to make the right decisions and not necessarily be manipulated by, characters like, Maddox, which is Jude's stepfather kind of situation. So basically, The Wicked King starts us off about a month after those events. And so maybe a month or 2 months after those events, or maybe it's a little bit more than that. But, essentially everything's been going relatively smooth, and everybody is enjoying the new king on the throne, not realizing that Jude is actually the power behind the throne and the one making all of these decisions, even though everybody at court, she is basically the right hand of Cardan, she's still not quite treated like she has that much power, because again, that human aspect of her is always going to be that major weakness in the eye of the Fae, and she knows this, and it's still part of her struggle. And so for the first half of the book, the major plot and the thing that we're building to at the end of the first half of the book is the rising tension between Cardan and the land above versus the kingdom of the sea. And so basically the Queen of the Sea gives Cardan an ultimatum, like, hey, you either marry my daughter, who is, how do we say her name, Narcissa, which is, of course, Cardan's ex-Fae kind of situation anyway, or we will attack you. Cardan is not a fan of that. Jude is not a fan of that. So they're like, no. They're trying to find a different way of going about this without, Jude especially doesn't want, Cardan to have a queen for some other secret reasons, but the main reason is because that is too much work for her. She's already has so much on her plate controlling Cardan, because of course at the end of The Cruel Prince, he strikes a deal with her, and essentially that I will be under your complete command for a year and a day, which, me being me, I didn't put two together, because that is a very heavy thing related to hand fasting, which is essentially kind of the deal that they made, which is very plot foreshadowing to something that happens within this book. So, essentially, Jude doesn't want that to happen. There's other things that happen in this first half, but it's really building up to, they know there's an attack, that the Undersea is planning something, and they've been working with Balkan, who is Cardan's brother, to basically stage a coup. And so they believe, they have this plan that during Jude's sister, whose name I am completely blanking on, what is her name? Tarwin's wedding, that they will try to make some attempt to attack or kidnap Oak, because everybody pretty much at this point knows that Oak is the rightful next in line to rule the throne and can crown Balkan as, the next king, essentially, or along those lines. So they have this plan that this is what's going to happen at the wedding. And so they stage all these events so that they can capture, the Undersea squad in the act while protecting Oak, because Oak is coming back with Vivian to, of course, see their sister's wedding to, Lucian? Whatever his name is. We don't like him. He's the ass of this story, always, even more so than Cardan in some ways. But surprise, surprise, that is not what happens. In fact, it's the thing that, Jude wasn't really expecting, the fact that she herself was kidnapped at the beginning half of the story and used as a chip against Cardan, because of course there is the suspecting that they have a very close relationship, more so than just her being his right hand. And while that's not exactly wrong, I'll get more into Cardan and Jude's relationship in a little bit, because that is definitely one of my favorite parts of this whole book, and it especially was very, very interesting in the Wicked King, especially considering the ending. So if anybody who's read this book already, you know the ending. Anybody on the internet who's read this book, we all know the ending of this book, and we're just like, okay then. So, she essentially gets kidnapped by the Undersea, and they try to glamour her to kill Cardan. That's part of Balkan's plan. She also learns about other aspects of this plan. And so when she finally is returned to the world above, she learns that Cardan did a decision that she wasn't expecting, and essentially he actually agreed to part of their demands to return her. And that was, this leads into the second half of the book, where we see a little bit more, I think, throughout this whole entire book, there is still that tension between Jude and Cardan, because as they set up in the first book, it's like they have this strong hate relationship, but there's a lot of sexual tension there and something deeper happening as well, attraction, whatever you want to put it. And so finally, at the we get more of that coming out. We also learn more about Cardan's background, including his mother. I won't get too much into that, but it's a very interesting and fun dynamic to read. And finally, there's a portion, I want to say it's in the second half of the book or close to the second half of the book, where we finally see kind of Cardan and Jude give in to their attraction to each other, if you get what I mean, in a very well-written little portion of it in this secret room in the kingdom. So that was refreshing to finally see there was some progression in the relationship. But because Jude has control over Cardan, there's still this sense of like, oh, you don't really trust me. And really, yeah, Jude doesn't trust him, but somehow there's this whole underlying thing. And so I'm going to get into this because it's the major twist at the end of this book. So this is a major spoiler. So if you haven't read this book and you're still watching this video up to this point, prepare to be spoiled a lot. So I'll give you a chance to click away. So yes, so essentially what happens at the end of this book is there's a certain plot point that we learn about. I'm not sure, I can't remember where it is in the book, but whoever is king of this fairy world, they is very much tied to the land, and quite literally his emotions, his power becomes the land. And so if he's angry, there's going to be raging storms. If he wants to raise a new landmass, he can do that because he literally can control the land. He is the essence of the land as well as the people. And so the problem, though, is because Jude has full control, essentially, for the most part, over Cardan, he can't actually access all of that power, although we get hints of it. So, there's all this kind of flirtatious and back and forth about if I should trust you, if I shouldn't trust you kind of thing between Jude and Cardan. And they gradually are getting closer. And so there's a couple points where Cardan kind of reveals a softer side of himself to Jude. And it's very personal and it's very surprising, I think, from the reader's point to like, wow, he actually has real emotions that are not just being a dick. Which, interesting enough, because considering that and then what happens at the end of this book. So essentially, the Queen of the Undersea, they're coming, they want to attack, they're planning on it, they're going to do it now. And so Cardan is going to meet with them. But before that, he kind of gives one more chance to Jude, like, hey, please just trust me and give me back my power because I love you, or something along those lines. And how about instead of just being the power behind the crown, why not be the power beside the crown, essentially? Become my queen of the fairy world and we can rule together as equals. Which kind of goes back to this whole issue with Jude, in that is really what she wants. Even though she, at this point, she has all the power that she always dreamed and wanted, it's still not there because she's still not treated as an equal, and that's really what she wants, is to be seen as an equal besides the Fae, which really in hindsight is probably never going to happen because, again, she's human and the Fae are never going to agree with that. Maybe. We'll see with the third book what happens. But for some reason, Jude is just like, I guess her brain just goes, duh, and completely agrees. And I feel like part of that is because of the softness and those little moments that Jude and Cardan shared in private, and how she saved his life more than once, and he's actually saved her life more than once now at this point. It's like, okay. And she's also, there was some earlier points in the book that I haven't gone over where she was betrayed by people close to her, and so it's like, it all kind of builds up to her agreeing to this about becoming the queen. And so they marry in secret, and then they go directly from that to meeting with the queen. And so, and part of that agreement to marry, have this marriage, is that Jude trusts Cardan and releases her power over him, and so she does that. And so then they directly meet with the Ocean Queen, and Cardan can completely let loose with his power and shows off. And the one small hiccup, though, is that Vulcan at this point had become the sort of ambassador of the undersea, and something occurs where he dies. I'm not going to tell you what, but he dies. And so the undersea is very pissed about that, and they want retribution for that. And so Cardan agrees. And so, well, yeah, okay, so his death has something to do with Jude. Let's just say that. His death has something to do with Jude, and Cardan knows this, and he asked Jude not to engage with Balkan. That led to this situation. And so Cardan basically agrees and banishes Jude to the human world. And that leads to one of the most cringy lines from this book ever. It literally made me physically cringe because Jude just like blurts out and screams, "But I'm the queen of fairyland," or something along those lines, and everybody just starts laughing, and it's just like, oh no, this is so bad. And so basically, very much like the beginning, the ending of The Cool Prince, where Jude just pulled the rug under Cardan. Cardan did the same to Jude and sent her away to the human world. And so now he can essentially rule the fairy world in peace. But they are technically still married. So there's that whole issue that we're going to see in the third book. But what I find so interesting about this is, of course, the fact that, the fairy cannot lie. So the things that Cardan did and said in order to get Jude to this point, how much of that, I wonder, was completely a planned manipulation? Because we know, and it's been hinted to, Cardan's been working with, the Roach, and he's been learning how to steal and do all this trickery stuff, and he's good at it. So how much of this was planned beforehand? Did he plan perfectly to do this to Jude by revealing and like getting under her skin like this? Or was it something sort of spur of the moment, and that he really does mean everything, and he has some grander scheme here in mind that we're going to maybe find out in the last book? I'm not sure. I would love to hear your guys' opinion about that down in the description, because I can't quite figure it out. I feel like it's a little bit, there has to be some level of truth to Cardan's intentions, especially the romantic ones he's, projected towards Jude, but at the same time, was it all for the means of gaining his freedom from Jude over her, her control over him? So, I don't know. I'm very curious. Again, I'm really, really excited to read the third and final book and see how it wraps all this story up. How does Jude actually return to Fairyland? Because there's so many loose strings here from the second book that, can easily blow up in all the characters' face at some point. And so I'm really not sure what to expect, but I'm very excited to see it. So that is some of the things I was thinking about from The Wicked King. Of course, there's a million other details that made this story fantastic, and I glazed over a lot of it. But those were the main things I was sort of thinking about, especially, again, that relationship between Jude and Cardan, and the thing that he does at the end where he completely tricks her. Again, that's the thing I can't wait to see how it develops in the third and final book, if we see if he's actually truly sincere or not, because again, they can't lie. So I don't know, that's my opinion. So again, I rated The Wicked King 5 stars. I completely enjoyed it. I really am just enjoying this series as a whole anyway. So if you guys have any other suggestions for books that you would like me to read, other ones that are along this fairy kind of world theme, because I definitely see that this is it's rising in popularity recently, because I know there's some shows coming out soon, like Carnival Street, I think it's called, or it features fairies and kind of a reversal situation to kind of like the Court Throne of Roses, where humans, in that story, like humans are the lower ones. Technically in this book it is too, but in this show with Orlando Bloom, it's like the fairies are kind of enslaved to the humans. So I'm curious to see about that show. Again, I love the fairy mythos and stories, and I would definitely love to read more of them. But again, whatever suggestions for books that you guys have that you would like to see me read and review, definitely leave them down in the comments. Hopefully this review made sense. Again, I didn't want to spoil too much of the little details, but really just talked about, you know, those bigger plot points that are happening here. Is the Undersea completely defeated? Probably not. They're probably going to pop back up in the last book, as well as some other groups as well. But we're just going to have to wait and see. So, thank you all so much for watching this, and I will see you in the next one.